Hey there, I'm Sarah, originally Canadian, current Texan, ex-gymnast, current human, and this is the very first video of my new YouTube channel or wherever this series of videos is going to live. And this video is really just an introduction to why am I starting a channel and what I hope to share and what I hope to accomplish with it and what I hope for people to get out of it. So let's get right to it. You might have heard of Simone Biles, the GOAT, meaning the greatest of all time, one of the best gymnasts or maybe even athletes that has ever existed. And she shocked the world by pulling out of the team final in the Tokyo 2020 Olympics that happened in August, of 2021. Not going to get into the whole history of the global pandemic that caused those years to misalign. And some of the reasons that she shared with the world about why she did choose to pull out was due to specific mental health concerns. I'm grateful for the fact that now we're actually able to speak about mental health a lot more openly. Simone was among more than, I think, like 200 survivors of sexual abuse by the Dr. Larry Nassar, who, amongst the people that he molested, several of them were elite gymnasts. Many of them ended up, representing the United States and world championships and the Olympics, and went on to have really successful careers. And I remember a couple of years ago when the Larry Nassar trial was going on. He's now sentenced to something like multiple life sentences right now. And just being really disappointed and almost feeling betrayed that the world seemed so shocked by what happened. Like everyone was like, how is it possible? How could this have happened? And as someone myself who did high level gymnastics and was very familiar with the culture of shame and secrecy, and if you are at all disobedient, we're going to shut you out and maybe make it more difficult for you to accomplish your goals. Having grown up in that culture, I'm like, how could something like this not have happened? And I think Simone Biles at one point said of USA Gymnastics, like, you had one job. You literally had one job, and that was to protect us, and you didn't do that. And I think that's where the sense of betrayal is coming from, is like connecting with myself as a kid, being like, how could anyone let this type of environment proliferate? I trained at a gym here in Texas where, other Olympians like Carly Patterson, Nastia Lukin, who, went on to become, all around Olympic champions. I was never as good as them. But I did train in the same environment as they did for several years. And I want to raise awareness for the fact that it's not only the Olympians who are experiencing these long-term after effects of the very dysfunctional environments of these highly competitive gymnastics programs. And I assume this happens for a lot of other sports as well. Your coach is just constantly humiliating, criticizing you. So your caregivers, how they talk to you, becomes your inner voice and your inner guide. And so when you're spending your formative years being talked to that way, that has some really serious long-term effects like depression and anxiety and complex PTSD, which is different from, if you could call it, regular PTSD, in that it's not a specific one-time event or maybe a compact time frame. These are a series of traumas that are happening fairly consistently over an extended period of time, usually in your childhood. So really, I'm making this series for people who have gone through a similar experience, maybe as gymnast, maybe as another type of athlete, and did so in their childhood and are kind of like looking at these symptoms like, man, this feels like crap. I don't want to feel this way anymore. I want some improvement. I want some relief. I know I certainly did. I did gymnastics from age 6 till almost about 17. So it had some role in my life pretty significantly for like almost 11 years, although I really only got competitive around when I was 8. Eventually got to the point where I was in the gym like 33, 35 hours a week. And on top of that was the driving back and forth and the sports psychologists and physical therapy and whatnot. So it really was a full-time job. And towards the end of my gymnastics career, so maybe when I was like 14, 15, 16, my mom really did notice that it was taking a huge toll on me. But we continued on in the sport. However, she started to look for solutions, something to help me. But the problem was she did grow up in a culture where mental health was somewhat taboo. I think she was open to it, but maybe there's the resources weren't as available back then as they are today. But a lot of the help that she sought out was more in the form of like some new agey type solutions. And there was a lot of like magical thinking and toxic positivity. And while I know she was well-intentioned, and I think pretty much everyone we came into contact with in those communities had good intentions as well, it just, oh my gosh, it just did so much more harm than good. There's something really demoralizing when you're promised over and over that there's some sort of magical solution, that if you just do it right and you believe it in the right way, then all of your pain is going to be alleviated. All of your problems are going to be solved, because you keep doing those things and it keeps not working for you. So you start thinking like, what's wrong with me? Why isn't it working for me? I guess I don't believe enough. I'm not doing it quite right. I'm broken beyond repair. So that's just really frustrating to look back on. And then, I moved away for college. And I think really around the time when I was 19 was when I really started looking for myself to understand. I kind of just wanted to feel better, honestly. I didn't really know what was wrong. I didn't talk to people about it because as a gymnast, you weren't allowed to talk about, like, you weren't allowed to express any emotion. You would get in trouble for laughing. So certainly I wasn't going to be open with people to talk about what I was struggling with. I didn't really trust people, which really sucks. My life is so much better now than it was before. And in large part due to the help that I sought out in the about decade since then. But there's a lot of crap out there when it comes to self-help. And so in those early days, when I was like 19, 20, 21, I really was drawn into like all these promises of quick fixes and 10 things to do, and then you'll be happy forever. And those things really weren't working out too great. They might have helped to a certain extent, and it's nice to feel a sense of hope that you can improve your life. What really helped, I think a major turning point for me, was reading The Gifts of Imperfection by Brené Brown. Absolutely love her. She's also in Texas, and she's really fun to watch, and her books are easy to read. And it's just jam-packed with really high quality research and a lot of her original research that she's done herself. And I love that at the beginning of her book, she says, this is not a quick fix. This is not an easy road. These are things that you're going to learn and you're going to practice and you're going to fail at, and you're just going to keep getting better at it, hopefully over time. But this is a whole journey. It's not just a weekend retreat that you go to and they give you some ayahuasca. I've never done that, but like do that and then you expect to come back changed forever. And so it's those really incremental changes that add up over time. If you've ever read Atomic Habits, or if you haven't, I'd also recommend you can just go watch a summary on YouTube or something like that. But the idea is that small habits over time really add up to meaningful progress. And so that's really what's been helpful for me. I have a background in biomedical engineering, and so I'm a scientist at heart. And I just come out of my skin when some of these self-help gurus talk about their personal experiences and their personal opinions as if they are fact. I guess their experiences naturally are subjective, and then people might be tempted to blindly follow that, and that's just really frustrating for me. And that's where it kind of gets into the point where it can kind of do more harm than good. So I'm very much into the research. I really like to curate where my information is coming from. So that's really what I want to do a lot of on this channel, is I'm going to do the heavy lifting of reading tons and tons of books and going through academic articles. This is my hobby. I just love to do it. I'm super passionate about it, but not everybody wants to dedicate the obscene amounts of time that I do to really diving into these. Or maybe you do, but it's just kind of nice to get like a synopsis and overview and point you in the direction of good resources. So I'm going to do a lot of that heavy lifting of going through that material and compiling it, hopefully in a way that makes sense, hopefully in a way that can kind of connect to your own life and is really, practical. But I'm not seeking to become a guru or anything. So any of the resources I pull from, I'll do my best to, share them, links to maybe specific books or, the articles that I'm reading, peer-reviewed articles. And I also really want to do the best I possibly can at differentiating between, hey, this information is based on research. Here are the authors. This is the type of experiment that they did. Here's how you can use the information, versus this is my own personal opinion. This is my own personal experience. I think it's really important to differentiate between those. My personal opinion might be entertaining, might be valuable and really resonate with you, but I want to make sure that you know that that's just some of my ideas. This is just like stuff that popped out of Sarah's brain. I recently took a course, like a super intensive course on psychological resilience. It was amazing. It totally blew my mind. I learned so much from it, and the classmates were great, and we were just devouring the material. What can I say about this course? I think my understanding of psychological resilience was more about managing your own emotions, and it turns out that it's such a broader concept than that. Part of what I want to share is, what is it that makes people more likely to be able to bounce back from adversity, or maybe bounce forward, which is the term for post-traumatic growth. So you've experienced a trauma, but not only do you get, to a point where you're, let's say, back to baseline or whatnot. That doesn't necessarily always happen after trauma, but like you continue to grow, you launch forward. There's ways that you expand yourself and your experience as a result. And to really look at like, what are the risk factors? I remember reading through those and being like, oh crap, like there's a lot of that in the gymnastics world. And then the protective factors. You always have a combination of the two. You usually don't have like this whole always smooth sailing life, and you just have the things that protect you such that you're better equipped to handle adversity. And usually, even when you're in an environment where there's a lot of risk, by risk, I mean like decreasing the likelihood that you're resilient. Like there's always going to be some positives and some negatives. And it's good to have a concept of what both of those are. And then what are specific coping styles, and, how are they useful in like one scenario versus another? When's the best time to use them, and give really practical examples. I mentioned The Gifts of Imperfection by Brene Brown. Oh, just love her work so much. So we'll go into a bit of, what is shame and vulnerability, and how do they get in the way of us being resilient and developing meaningful connections. There's a lot of really good information out there, and there's a lot of really bad. So to sum it up, this channel is specifically dedicated to ex-child athletes who are in really dysfunctional training environments. And let me start that over. I'll just cut that out. This channel is dedicated to ex-child athletes. So for those of us who are in really dysfunctional training environments during our formative years, might be experiencing things like perfectionism, complex PTSD, depression, and anxiety, and are just like, I'm tired of this crap. I want to feel better, and are looking for information that's maybe more curated and different from some of the misinformation out there, let's just put it that way, that you can often find in self-help, and instead want to see things that are empirically backed, that have been explored by research, and to like hopefully have that be sprinkled in with some entertaining stories maybe you can connect to. And I think it would be incredible if this grows into a community, really. where people are watching these videos and adding comments about their own different experiences and what's helped them and what resources they're using. There's just such tremendous benefit in connecting with people who have had similar experiences and learning from each other. And so that would just be fantastic. I've loved when I've had the opportunity to do that. I would love to hear people's thoughts on some of these things and hear your stories. And I'm going to continue sharing my stories as well. And I'm looking forward to getting to catch up with maybe some of my ex-teammates and other friends who are high-level athletes and hear from them about, what their experiences were like, what are they working on right now. And yeah, I care about this so much. This has tremendous personal meaning. I've gone through that journey of experiencing a lot of pain and a lot of confusion because I had no idea. I mean, I emerged from the sport thinking that it was just me. That's just who I was, not realizing how much impact that environment really had on me. And like fast forward to my life now, which is definitely far from perfect. And I definitely still am continuing to do this work, but it's something I'm so passionate about. And I'm just really excited to go through this information and to share it with, hopefully it'll be like a whole bunch of people who will find it valuable as well. So thanks for listening all the way through. If this sounds interesting to you, absolutely, please just follow along for this journey. I would love it if you did. And hopefully you get a lot of value out of this. And that's all, folks.